I'll go straight to the first issue, and I want Stephen Olieka particularly to address this issue. Now, Stephen, you have an engineering background, and indeed you've also practiced engineering for many years before you went into HR practice. But even in HR practice, we note that your practice of HR up to a very top level has been mainly in engineering firms. Talk of Mia Sugar, talk of Safaricom, talk of the Safal Group, KCCA. So it means much as you are trying to run away from engineering, you've not quite escaped engineering. And we are glad to have you with that combination of engineering and HR. I want you to start by sharing with us, based on your experience, why you think there are challenges facing people with engineering background in scaling up the ladder of engineering leadership. Stephen.
You can hear me?
Yes, Steve, I can hear you. I believe
yes, thank you, David. What I'm going to address this afternoon actually is an issue that does not necessarily hamper the growth of engineers alone, but most managers. What you may have noticed in organizations is that people are appointed and promoted on the basis of functional performance results, how well they do in their current job. But research is actually starting to dispel that approach to promoting people. And as much as people want to be the best they can be in their functional capabilities, research is now showing the reverse. And I want to summarize it by saying that IQ gets you the job. Something else ensures that you get promoted and you grow, especially in the modern workplace. And this is very important for engineers in particular. And why I say this is because most engineers have been trained to reason and think with logic. It's a straight line. Things cannot go out of the straight line. There should not be outliers. It is either on or off. It's either day or night for engineers. But if you come into the social sciences, then you start realizing that rules are just rules. But there will come up situations that will require you to apply other capabilities other than that logic. And more so, if you look at engineers, they work with machines, mostly. And of course, machines have buttons which you switch on and off and so on. Unfortunately for engineers, human beings are not machines. And when you deal with human beings, you have to start reasoning differently, looking at things differently, having some room for flexibility so that you can see what we call nuances, the small changes and variances that change one situation and make it very different from another. So if you're looking at growing, building yourself to grow as an engineer in your profession, then you may have to underplay a bit of the IQ part and focus more on your people or social skills. And one key competency under what we call the people skills is something called EQ, emotional intelligence or quotient. Under that particular competency, we have 5 sub-competencies. And these 5 sub-competencies then also spread out to almost 15 to 20 other sub-competencies. But I've just mentioned the top 5. These are, number 1, self-awareness. Then number 2, self-regulation. Number 3, self-motivation. Number 4, empathy. And number 5, your social skills. Take it from me that if you want to grow, in your organization, in your industry, in your area of specialization, you must learn how to build relationships. And the art of building relationships is premised on EQ. Number one, you must know yourself and understand yourself. What are your strengths, weaknesses? What are your hotspots? What are those things that sabotage your growth so that you can address them? And addressing them is by self-regulating, which is the second part, that you are able to regulate yourself, change how you are operating in different situations around people to allow you to be seen in a positive light, okay? And this is because before we think, we feel. And that feeling is very important because it dictates then what you do next, even before you think. And therefore you need to manage your self-awareness, understand yourself, know yourself. You need to self-regulate after you have known yourself. And then also you need to question why you do certain things, and that is the self-motivation. Why do you do the things you do when you are working? Are you driven by monetary gain or doing something very well and accomplishing it? And lastly, second from last is, how do you relate to other people? Do you take time to understand where they are coming from, what they are going through, so that when you make decisions, all those considerations are in place? And that is what you call empathy. But last but not least, I just want to mention something that has just happened as I joined. I have seen a former classmate, and Joseph Okech is here. He was my classmate at the university. But it is so satisfying to see that even before I reached out to him, he has already sent me a private message. What does that tell you about my relationship with Joseph Okech? It tells him that when we parted, we had very good interactions. And that's why he can comfortably reach out to me to greet me and tell me, "Hi, Stephen, I can see you are here." Now that is how good your social skills should be. How many people from your primary school do you still talk to today? How many people from secondary school do you still talk to today? How many people from university do you still interact with today? That is a measure of your social skills. How many people from your previous jobs do you still relate to today? That is EQ. It is so important for you that if you really want to grow yourself in your workplace and anywhere else, you must go and get assessed and understand how you are scoring on emotional intelligence. Number two, and this is usually something I say, if you are in an organization and you're not from engineering, and sometimes also not from finance, if someone sends you to those two departments, you start fearing. You start getting worried because you're going to deal with engineers and you know how stern they can be and how they are very brief in their communication. They say things briefly and they mean it and they stop. So you will need to work on your communication skills. That is number two. Engineers struggle with this. What do I really mean here? One of the most critical aspects of communications is listening skills. And here we say active listening. Most engineers, if you engage them and you want to talk to them, they actually listen to reply. That should not be the case. You should listen to understand. And the best way to listen to understand is to listen by mind, body, and soul. So that when I'm looking at you on your face, if I'm talking about a sad story, I should see that feeling in your face, which is telling me that what I'm telling you is hitting home, and so on. So you may require training. You may need to go and learn what active listening means. It should not be listening to reply. It should be listening to understand, listening to feel, listening to empathize, and finally, listening to refresh so that you understand even more. I want you to just mention that you can go online and look for a Chinese symbol. A Chinese symbol, you can Google it, which summarizes what I've just described here about active listening, okay? Number three, most engineers tend to disappear into the machines, either into the factory or wherever they are working from. Now, for you to grow in an organization, you must grow your visibility. And that visibility comes by the way of growing your brand. And growing that brand requires that you go out consciously and constructively to build your brand. How are you known in the organization? What do they know you for? Yeah? Most of us actually do not take time to build a reputation around who we are and what we are known for. What do people come to you for? You need to bring that out clearly. And therefore, to do that, you need to start asking people around, what am I known for? How do people view me? Talk to some of your close colleagues in the organization. And then when opportunities come up, position yourself by offering yourself to do certain things so that your visibility goes up and you are known. But that growth may not just come within your organization. So you need to find a way to network within your field, engineering. For example, for me, one of the things that I've been doing, and David is fully exploiting, is that I go out and do presentations in my professional body. So when they have a national conference, when they have a seminar or something happening in Mombasa, in Naivasha, in Nairobi, they call me. Actually, just a week ago, I was at the College of Human Resource Management doing a webinar on performance management. And so there are HR professionals in our field now who know me, and they say that is the go-to person for performance management. For you as an engineer, how do your fellow engineers know you? How do they see you? What are the things they know? If they need a solution, they will look for you. Find a way to build your reputation. And we have 3 R's, which says the audience should receive and store and repeat your brand. Okay? They should receive, store it, and repeat it. But they should be repeating the positive things. We know Stephen for this. Stephen is a very good person for this. Stephen is very good in performance management, and so on. As an engineer, what is your personal brand? Work on it. Number 4 is something that, again, sometimes I see engineers suffering from, because I've worked with them in many of these organizations that David has talked about. Engineers sometimes, because we grew up as the best guys, we scored the best grades, we did the toughest courses around, electrical, mechanical engineering, and so on. And so we tend to be lone rangers. And yet, for you to grow and to be promoted and to become useful at a higher level, we need you to work in teams. Teamwork is very important. When we, for example, are appointing people into project teams, we want people who can work with others. We want people who can collaborate with others. So you need to work on team building, collaboration, working with others. And this can go closely with personal branding, so that you learn how to work with other people. And by the way, this then requires you to be a bit flexible, to be able to accept other people's views. Not that you are the only one who knows. Other people also know something that might be useful to you. Remember, there is the principle of 1 + 1 = 3, not 2. Now, that principle happens because my weakness may be somebody else's strength. And therefore, when we come together, it is not 1 + 1 = 2. Because when your strength is my weakness and you actually correct it, the output is much higher than the individual sums of the outputs of the two. And that's why 1 + 1 = 3. So teamwork is very important. Now let me just, as I close out, talk about something else again that engineers struggle with. Realize all these things I'm talking about are related to people's skills. And therefore, you start seeing that functional excellence, being very good in your technical field, is just one thing. But there are other things that you need to work on, and which I've mentioned: EQ, your communication skills, your personal brand, and teamwork. But the last one is tact. And when I talk about tact, I know that within the engineering field, we have professional ethics, which then require that you have to do things in a particular way, otherwise you will be called out for not being professionally ethical. So how do you navigate an environment where you are surrounded by people who are not ethical as you wish to be? And sometimes because of that rigidness, you find engineers being said to be rigid. They are not very easy to convince and work with. And of course, like we say, when it comes to matters ethical, you really have to live your ethics every day. But then you have to find the right language, you have to find the right reasons, you have to find the right moment to say certain things so that people can listen to you and also understand your position. And what do we call that? We call it tact. That you need to go and train yourself, work with other people, and learn to use tact to negotiate around like ethical minefields so that you look well. And that again comes back to personal branding. Even as you nicely decline, you look well and it promotes you. You are viewed in a positive way so that you can grow in your career. Let me stop there. I've just mentioned those 4 things: emotional intelligence, communication skills, personal branding, teamwork, and tact. One thing I was about to leave, but I think it is very important. I can tell you I attended a training in Japan, and an engineer came there for a presentation of 10 minutes, and he had 50 slides. And these are Japanese, they are time conscious. And what are they saying? They're saying, please keep time, keep time. But my friend insisted that he had to finish his 50 slides in 10 minutes. So, which meant that he had to go over the 10 minutes and ended up doing 30 minutes. For the Japanese, that was a no-no. It was a very bad show. So one of the things that I pray that you guys can go and learn, and please start practicing these things, is learn how to come up with very good presentations for different occasions. I have learned that if I'm going to do a presentation for the board, maximum 6, 7, 8 slides, maximum, if not 5. And normally it's high level points, which then will say, I do slide 1, slide 2, and questions come up. And straight away they are starting to make decisions because that is what they want to do. If you are going to do a presentation for training, you need to think about the audience, what kind of people are there and so on. So how do you actually use your gestures? Like you are seeing me now use my hands and so on. All these are communication skills, presentation skills that you need to work on. So that as an engineer, you may have very good ideas, but if you do not package them well, you will not communicate. Thank you.
Thank you much, Steve. Clearly, you've highlighted very key points that we engineers need to be aware: the EQ, the personal branding, teamwork, tact, and you finalized with the we need to acquire some presentation skills. I just want to hear something from Catherine. Catherine, you're by no, I mean, you've scaled up leadership in your organization. Being the chief engineer, quality at KDN is no mean task. I'm sure some of the issues that Steven has actually mentioned, you can easily relate with them. Before I ask you the question meant for you to respond, just react to some of the issues that Steve has actually mentioned, especially given your real life experience as an engineer.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. I agree totally with everything Olieka has said. It is often said that you cannot achieve something big alone. To achieve something big, you have to be in a team. And so for that reason, I still see some engineers who think they want to get 100% in terms of their thinking, the technical aspect, with very little clue in terms of how to work with others, how to orchestrate teams to produce results. No matter how much you know about a subject, even if you can get 100%, if you can't work with others, if you can't make an outcome possible, If you can't use the resources at your disposal, including people and budget, and produce a result, then that 100% really, it doesn't work out to 1 + 1 is 3. The other thing I wanted to follow up to what Stephen has said is value add. There's a phrase I have called everything you think, say, or do counts. So every time you're walking along the corridors of where you work, and that is what has led me to get leadership outside KenGen, board positions and so on. It's because I believe that everything I think, say, or do counts. If I'm looking at the next person, every moment is an interview moment. If I have served with you in a committee, Engineer Mulongo, and somebody is looking for someone to serve in another committee, the way Stephen saw me behaving in the last committee is what will determine whether he will present my name or my name is a name that you'd like to put in the bottom drawer. So everything you think, say, or do counts. How you behave, how you greet people in the morning, how the purpose with which you walk along the corridors where you're working, every single meeting you participate in, your brand on the social media platforms, all of them are building or taking away from your brand. So they're always counting positively and they're always counting negatively. Let me leave it at that's what I can answer the question that was meant for me. By the way, when Stephen was talking, I even forgot I was a panelist. I was very busy taking notes. Thank you, Stephen.
So Catherine, thanks. The question really meant for you, and which of course links up with what Steve has just mentioned, is you still realize that in some engineering organizations in Kenya, the top leaders are actually non-engineers. We would imagine that if we had an engineer as a top leader, it would serve the engineering fraternity better, the engineering profession. But that is not the case in some of the engineering organizations in Kenya. And other than just being able to lead people at a sectional level, the department level, we also want engineers to go up to that top level and become the CEO of such and such organization, because with that, we are sure that he will have the interest of engineers at heart. That is not the case, okay? So Catherine, I'm specifically addressing top leadership in organizations in Kenya. And I want you to shed some light in your thinking why we don't have leaders at that level.
Thank you, David. Let me first of all say to the audience that has joined us today, since you took time to join this meeting, I would encourage you to go and develop a personal development plan so that you have some action points from this meeting. Don't let the points disappear. We are always told, please write, and they say a very small percentage actually take time to write it down. For those who don't journal, you'll be surprised how much value you can get by starting to be someone who writes down. Consolidate all the points from these meetings, the ones that are coming from Stephen and myself, and even Engineer Mulongo, and then go and try and see which one can you deal with. And for that matter, get somebody to do for you an assessment. 2 assessments that I can talk about are the 4D clarity, commonly known as the colors. What is your color personality? And the other one is the Myers-Briggs personality. You heard the things that Stephen has said. I don't want to repeat them. Get that assessment done and look at yourself. Take a step back and look at who you are. Are you green? Are you red? Are you blue? Are you yellow? And the color that you are, what are the things hampering your progress? Now, having said that, the number one reason, David, according to me, why engineers are not getting into the apex of organizations is because they have little commercial sense. They are seen as having lower business acumen. Most organizations, other than humanitarian, exist to make profit. And you want to see the person at the top being a person who's conscious about profit, the commercial aspects of the business. If you are leading Safaricom, if you're a person who led GE like Jack Welch, the bottom line was always, what kind of growth did we have? How are our stocks faring? and so on. And so engineers, like we have already said before, are so focused on the technical. They want to see if this plant can run, without focusing on, is it running at optimal cost? It's not enough that the machine is running. Is it running at optimal costs? All the resources that you are given, are you optimizing them? So the number one reason for that is commercial sense, entrepreneurial sense, business acumen. Then coming a close second are the non-technical issues, the people awareness, the finance awareness, things to do with compliance and risks then follow. And from there, now you go to networking. Do you hang out with the people who make the final decisions? And let me talk about, you're talking about leadership at the CEO level, but what about leadership at such other elements of leadership, such as board levels and even institutional, such as your professional membership? In our case, it's IEK and EBK. Do you inspire enough confidence for people to make you a leader, whether it's the leader that elected or even leadership through nomination? And for that, there has to be some degree of networking. Stephen spoke earlier about brands. What is your signature? You need some kind of a signature. How authentic are you? What do people think of when they think of you? And that's where we are saying you cannot network without some kind of a brand. There has to be an element of signature, of this is what you're known for. And once you have started developing that brand, how do you develop that brand? Talk in conferences, present papers where necessary, join your professional body, and provide some services, volunteer services, even in your own company where you work, and so on. And once you do this, then you have a basis for your networking. When you go to an event and you're giving an elevator pitch, you have something to tell the other person. There's some content. Stakeholder management, knowing who are those making those decisions, and exposure. Stephen said earlier that some of the engineers are still in the back room. What are you doing to put yourself in front where the decision makers are? Alongside the networking, you also have to find a way of getting exposure. And lastly, because of time, then we have the self-awareness and the ability to climb the corporate ladder, which again comes from what I said earlier. Everything you think, say, or do count. If you keep behaving in a manner to inspire confidence, you will keep being invited into committees. The more committees you are in and the more success you're getting, the more you're invited to and the more success you derive. So again, always ask that question. How can you help the next person? Don't think about yourself all the time. The more you give, the more you receive. I have found that giving has brought me so much back. People remember that when they were stranded about an idea, you actually help them to crystallize those thoughts and develop those thoughts and actually come up with a product. So those are some of the thoughts I have. And for the listeners, let me say once again, develop a personal development plan. Do a self-assessment. The color personalities is easy to work with. You see the gaps quickly. The idea is that you should try and have all the colors in equal measure, so you know when to wear which hat, you know when to be empathic, you know when to become tough and results-oriented, you know when to look at data and critical analysis, and you know when to look like you're fun, loving, and a little bit easygoing. So for the interest of the team's benefits. I'll leave it there, David.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I think the issue of a PDP, the personal development plan, needs to be emphasized here, because that is what makes us break away from functionality in our different disciplines, because we are definitely functional. But if we really want to grow up as leaders, then we have to plan on how we shall reach there. Okay, because every day we are working and people are seeing what we are doing, if it's maintenance or design, and people appreciate. But we really have to realize that to become a leader, it requires you to have a plan. And you give yourself, let's say, a 2-year plan, 5-year plan, and in the plan, there are activities that must be undertaken for you to attain the leadership position that you want. It will not just come. I also want to emphasize again the point you mentioned about having business skills, having business at the back of your mind. You know, sometimes we love innovating, and innovations are fun, it's exciting, but not all innovations are profitable. Not all innovations are profitable. So we need to push aside the excitement of innovations and working with machines and realize that for the business, what matters is actually the bottom line. So no matter how good you are technically, if the proposal you are making to your board or to senior management does not affect the bottom line positively, you're not doing much for that business. So we have like 20 minutes left. I can only see one question on the wall. Participants, I encourage you, in case you have a question, just post it right now, because the remaining few minutes we shall dedicate them to Q&A. But as we wait for more questions to come, Catherine, I'm back on you. And
David.
Yes, Steve.
I just wanted to add on what Catherine has said and mention two things, because when we talk about business acumen, I think the listeners need to understand what we are talking about. That most of us are so much focused on the engineering aspects, and we forget that the bloodline of an organization is money. You can have machines, but if money is not flowing, and if you don't understand how that money moves, as a person, you are a passenger in that organization. And if you really then want to be seen to be commercially competent, you must be able to read the cash flow statement of your organization. And terms like sales, cost of sales, gross profit, tax, depreciation should have meaning for you. And not just have meaning, but you should be also comfortable to use them. And when you open the financial statements of your organization, those terms like amortization and what appearing in that statement should not scare you. Meaning, take some time. If it is necessary, go and study. We have what we call finance for non-finance managers. If you look at most of the people who end up as leaders in a business, one of the key considerations is that they can speak that finance language. And most of them come from the field of marketing and sales or finance. So that reading a financial statement for them is very easy, but not just reading it, also looking at it and getting to understand what it is saying. Are we doing well or we are not doing well? So guys need to start understanding what a cash flow statement means. They need to understand what is cost of sales, what is gross profit, what are fixed costs, and so on. That's number one. Number two, and this is very important, I'm currently providing consultants to an organization which is trying to help its leaders manage well. And we are doing a 360-degree assessment for the leaders. And to do it, we want to explain to the leaders why. And I'm just going to talk briefly about it. For you to get results, because you will be chosen for results. For you to get the results as a leader, you need to understand that 85 to 90% of the difference between outstanding and average leadership is emotional intelligence, which I have already talked about. Please understand this. 85 to 90% of difference between outstanding and average leadership is emotional intelligence. And this is research, which is in a book called Management Focus on Leaders. The author is called Annie McKee. So this research is saying emotional intelligence is very important. Number two, leadership practices and alignment. Up to 70% of climate is related to leadership practices. So if you are going to be a leader, just know what you do will create a certain climate in the organization. Your own leadership practices and behaviors are going to create a certain climate in the organization. And 70 up to 70% of the climate in an organization is created by the leadership practices. The last part is that organizational climate, how it contributes to results. And it says up to 30% of discretionary output of employees. And I want you to understand this, discretionary. This is not what they are supposed to do as a duty or responsibility, but going out of their way much further beyond their actual duty. 30% is as a result of that climate. So as a leader, you need to start practicing how to create the right climate in your team. You need to understand what are the ingredients of the right climate. And a big portion of that is how you lead people, the things you do as a leader. And then a bigger portion of that comes from your emotional intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Ask the next question. Thank you so much for that, Steve. Let me just say, I want the audience to go and Google the smell of the place. I have linked that to what Stephen said about climate, and now I can see how it connects. Find out if you're serious about leadership, which you are because you joined this, go and Google the smell of the place and let the point Stephen has said about climate sink. But what I wanted to say, as much as we're pressed for time, is I have specifically met leaders who shun learning about HR, about finance, about marketing, because they're too important for such topics. That is the first step towards not getting to the apex of an organization. Because at the top of the organization, you manage everything, not only engineering. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Catherine and Steve, for emphasizing that you are becoming a leader of an organization. So the question is, what does the organization constitute? It constitutes of marketing, supply chain, HR, all those. And so you cannot be a leader who doesn't know what is happening in the organization. Just remember that you are leading an organization. And the organization constitutes of different departments that are all coming together to make it achieve the bottom line, which is actually making profits. There are two questions that have been sent. Catherine, I want you to briefly comment on women leadership, okay? Are there extra issues that women need to know as far as leadership in engineering is concerned? That is one. And there's a question which has been asked about higher education. And I know you mentioned this last time, that what can institutions of higher education do differently to have graduates with a better balance of IQ and EQ? So Catherine, I want you to go for those two questions very briefly. And Steve, if you have a comment you can make, and then if there's time, we shall address another question. Catherine, you have a question directly meant for you. Do you believe in saying never outshine your master? How should one navigate around that?
Thank you, David. Let me be very brief. The first one about women, and I won't spend too much time. I can always talk to the women in the group later. Women, we have come a long way. We're in a better position. There is no excuse now for women to be disadvantaged. If you're a woman and you demonstrate just a little competence, you'll find all the doors will be open for you. There's no door that is remaining shut for you now, as long as you can demonstrate some competence. There's only one challenge. The women are the ones who are a challenge unto themselves. They have sticky floors. It is them who are afraid to take risks. So as long as women can be encouraged to be more courageous, they're going to find themselves in a place that they never imagined. And yes, there are a lot of biases, and all these biases are unconscious. If I walk into a room with David and I'm David's boss, audience, who do you think they'll imagine is the boss? Automatically, it's David who will be seen as the boss, because there is that unconscious bias. And so that unconscious bias works against women. Yes, it's true. However, it can be overcome. And nowadays, there are countless opportunities for women. The only important thing is that women must demonstrate competence. The second question was on EQ, IQ. Stephen spoke about EQ, and he combined it with social quotient, how good you are at building relationships and connecting. And today during COVID, people are emphasizing adversary quotient. How can you bounce back? And so we are saying there is no school that is sitting there waiting to teach you this EQ, SQ, and AQ. This is going to be largely personal initiative. Even companies are not sitting around waiting. Yes, you can have a coach, but even when you have a coach, you have to have your own ideas, your own plans, your own goals, and your own aspirations and ambitions. So let us just say in short for today that please take initiative, treat it like your own agenda. Everything you think say or do counts. It's up to you to figure out, how am I going to build all these questions? IQ was built for me by the school. And the last question that was coming directly to me was, never outshine your boss. Your master for that matter. This is a delicate balance. We are seeing what's happening in the country right now. The thing is, yes, it is true. You always have to navigate. And by the way, leadership, you cannot avoid navigating. I'm always using that word. How do I navigate this? And I'm always saying, where do I get Solomonic wisdom? The more of a leader you are, the more you have to keep praying for Solomonic wisdom every day, because you're navigating, you navigate your team members, you navigate your peers, you navigate your immediate master and the one higher. So you're always navigating. That is the so-called EQ. It's closely related. So the person asking this question, there is no simple answer to this. As my father used to say, there is no formula. This is a navigating issue. You navigate it every day. You have to know the day you are going to the boss in a cool, calm way and saying this, unajileta chini. There is the day you're going to the boss with full confidence that, yes, I know I can achieve this, even if you're shaking inside. There is the day you're going to your peers, you know the answer, but you're pretending you don't know the answer, it's EQ, so that you can give them a chance to participate and take ownership. So, David, the answer to that question is, you're always navigating.
And just to add on to that, Catherine, what I also know is that much as you are the one delivering, don't appear like you are the one delivering. It's okay. It's okay for your boss to take the credit. Okay? So yes, that is what it means. Do not outshine your master. Yes, you are the one delivering, but let your boss take the credit. Doesn't stop you from climbing up leadership. The leadership.
It's true.
Ladder. Yeah,
we have seen people who have outshone their masters with dire consequences. People like Robert Ouko. So you have to know the time when you have to really, really tone down and let your masters. If you know you're brilliant and there's a team that's coming from outside that's sponsoring and they're going to change the leadership from your master to you, that is the point when you have to tone down and give your master the answers if it's going to be consequential, so that they're the one who shines. So yes, that is part of the navigating that I was talking about. So be conscious, be self-aware that this situation calls for this behavior.
Thank you, Catherine. Stephen, maybe you can go at this before I finalize. There's somebody who's asking whether, does teamwork include working in consortium teams? Does teamwork include working in consortium teams?
Yeah, David, remember when I started, I said functional skills and people skills. Most of the things we are actually revolving around are people skills. I believe that in consortiums, you are just interacting with colleagues from other places, isn't it? So yes, if you are put in a team, in a consortium, those are people you are working with, and all these things apply. Yeah, but I would like to talk to Omar when he says the institutions, and I want to give him an example. When I was doing my MBA class, we were asked to do mock presentations for the project work. But one thing I noticed was that most of my classmates were scared of doing the presentations. And so what I did was I offered one Saturday, because these were part-time classes, to train them on how to do presentations. And I did it within an afternoon, highly summarized, but just touching on the key things that they needed to look out for as they did the presentations. And then the next weekend, we were doing those presentations in a big hall where other classes were also doing the mock presentations. And something came out. It stood out, our class stood out. And then the other classes started asking my classmates, how comes you guys, your presentations are different and unique? Until they had to point at me and say, that guy showed us what to do. Omar, what I'm saying is that create opportunities for your students to learn how to present. create opportunities. In fact, projects should be done in a team, not single, because that is how you create that solo mind when people do single projects. Have opportunities for your students to do presentations, to work in teams, to do projects in teams, so that they learn how to work around each other. It's very important. Then someone asked about outshining your master. Remember in my presentation, I talked about tact. That is tact. You know, looking at a situation and understanding that situation and the implications and finding the best way out of it. There is something called conflict management, and it has different ways of resolving conflict. Some is called avoidance, I don't know what, and so on. It's called a Klinsmann something chart. Go and look for it, and you see those different approaches of managing conflict actually point to different scenarios, and one will work for another and not the other, and so on. And then someone is saying, working in a family business, you are not planted in that business. If your ambition outgrows that organization, learn those things and move on. As I talk now, I've worked in 6 organizations. And each time I felt like 3-4 years I've done here and it's enough, I moved on. Have some ambition. Sometimes it makes you challenge yourself and grow. Thank you.
Let me just add for the individual talking about family business. No matter where you are kept, somebody said, if you are planted in a sewage, become a vibrant, beautiful plant. So always figure out how to thrive. No matter what situation you're in, you're always trying to figure out, how do I thrive? So the short answer to that question, in addition to what Stephen has said, always deliver value. You're concentrating all your efforts. Instead of spending energy complaining, spend energy delivering value. Your day will come. Your day will come, whether it will come in that organization or in another one. Somebody will notice all the effort you put, all the value you bring, how much you focus on the positive. So don't concentrate your energies on the gaps that there is in that organization. What value is that adding? Concentrate your energies on the value you can add to yourself and to that company for the duration that you're there. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Catherine. The word here is value. Value, value, value. Wherever you are, whatever situations you are going through, remember the word value. Are you adding value? Once you add value, the rest will come automatically. Don't have to worry about the rest, right? So participants, I think our time is up. It is 1 minute to 4 as per my clock. Thank you so much for the 1 hour that you've been with us in this session. As an organization, VISCA is determined to play its role in building leaders in engineering, and that's why we've just developed a program we are calling LEAP, Leadership in Engineering Advancement Program. And some of the speakers that you've had here, plus others out, have been key contributors to ensuring that that program has what it takes to build engineers. It starts from the lowest level. We are addressing the technician, then we move to an engineer, and we go all the way to the executive engineer, and we are looking at just what skills are required. This program will be launched next month. Some of you might have seen on LinkedIn and Facebook the advertisement around this program. Take your time, send your inquiry, and we shall respond. But guys, we have what it takes to be leaders if only we can agree that there are things that we must learn and continue learning every day. Thank you much, viewers. Thank you, participants, for your time. And we look forward to your participation in another session where we shall be inviting other leaders. Remember last time we were 5, so we shall be inviting other leaders also to share their experiences as far as leadership in engineering is concerned. Thank you so much, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to try